I don't know that a lot of people picked us to go 6-1 in these first 7 games.
I'm sure there's going to be people that come out of the woodwork and said that they were. I don't remember. I'll have to go back on the Cover One Buffalo when we did it. I remember Greg and I's thought was like, it could be like you could be in a position where you're a 5-win, 6-win team, but it was just as likely that we felt that you could be 3-3 after the first 6, right? Like you could be hanging around that. And once we got past that stretch, it was easy sailing. But now it feels. I think most people, if they look back at their predictions, feels like right now you'd be playing with a little bit of house money.
Well, no one wants to pick 17-0 or 16-1 because it doesn't feel. It feels like very unlikely to have that kind of a season. But the losses that people were picking were generally it was LA or Baltimore or KC. Like this is what people were picking as
Green
the losses.
Bay looked a lot.
Yeah, Green Bay going into the season.
Then. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
So now we're past all that. So
but I will say we're past some of that, but some things that we maybe didn't see coming are approaching too. Like I feel like now this Minnesota game feels a lot more serious than it felt in August.
You're right. I mean, like certainly Minnesota. It seems to me like Minnesota and Cincinnati are the 2 toughest games left on paper.
Yeah, I'd agree there. Cincy, I'm having a hard time really getting a read on that team. I thought they were a pretty phony Super Bowl team. I remember the playoff preview we were doing, and everyone that was on the preview was high on Cincy, and I didn't see it. And they ended up being right last year because they got hot and went on a nice playoff run. But I just saw a lot of vulnerability on that team. They did not seem to me to be a Super Bowl contender, and I think that's probably biting them a little bit this year. And LA, I think both those teams got hot at the right times last year, which does matter. But I don't think either of them were the best team in football last year.
Yeah, it was a very strange. I mean, I think at the time we were talking about that Buffalo Kansas City game as being essentially the Super Bowl, but then KC lost. But I like to think that it's because they spent themselves getting past Buffalo.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, why don't I run through the last 10 games with you real quick, and you just say win or loss.
Okay, but you have to do it too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right, fair.
I would like to just put it out there that tomorrow night, Notre Dame Clemson, we're going to be doing a watch party, playback.tv, and look for Cover One's room.
And I got to get you a graphic for that.
It's going to be like a Manning cast sort of feel. We're going to watch Notre Dame and Clemson. It's at 7:30 tomorrow. If you guys are around, you want to stop in and say hi, it should be fun. So we got the Jets this Sunday.
Yeah.
I think that's a win.
I think it's going to be a huge dub.
Yeah.
Boat racing, big dub.
Minnesota. It's a 1 p.m. game it's in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pick it as a win. The Bills are going to be favorites.
I can't pick the Vikings. I can't pick the Vikings. I mean,
they present some challenges in that they can get physical and be balanced. And Justin Jefferson actually can just win a game himself, right? Like they have the ability and some explosive players, and it will be more of a challenge than some of these other teams. I think it'll be probably the closest of the remaining games.
Yeah, sure. Like if we drop that game, it's not going to be a huge shock or anything. But, it's like it's almost like you have to look for a loss at this point when you look at the schedule. So, I mean, after Minnesota, it's Cleveland again in Buffalo, 1 p.m. game. I don't think we're going to lose that game.
No. I mean, that's Watson's still not back, right?
No, he's not back until
it'll be the Texans game.
The week 13 or 14, I think.
13, right. Yeah, I mean, again, I know the Bills have had issues this last week with the run defense. I think that's way overblown. I don't think they were expecting it. Von Miller talked about that he was out of his rush lanes a lot. Just like this game plan didn't make any sense. I think it caught everyone off guard. Going into that Cleveland game, obviously the defensive strategy is going to be to take away Nick Chubb, right? And so I think if you focus on that, I don't think he'll be able to he'll get some of his, but I really don't think the way to beat the Buffalo Bills is that way anymore. They can just score too quick, and they can get the stops on defense to stop you. So yeah, I think they'll be able to get through Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay showed that, you can run all you want. It just the Bills' win probability just goes up.
Yeah, you got to stop them from scoring. Some of these teams though, like I think there's some playmakers on Cleveland that, again, my biggest problem right now for the Buffalo Bills is the self-inflicted wounds.
Right.
It's gonna catch up to you with one of these types of games. It could even be this weekend. Like, that Jets defense is good enough where if you put the ball out too many times, they're gonna make some plays. And so some of these teams coming up, you do see playmakers where if the Bills are playing as sloppy as they have so far, some point that's gonna bite them.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, with a team like the Jets, it's like they have to get some defensive or special teams points in order to have a chance. And even then, I don't know. I just don't think they can stop us enough. No. So, I mean, you got Detroit on Thanksgiving. We don't need to talk about that game, I don't think. No. New England, Thursday night game in Foxborough.
Yeah, again, this one, until they have a quarterback that feels like any type of threat, and even that run game doesn't feel like the same type of threat that it was a year ago. Like, if they were still running the ball in the manner that they did a year ago, like Stevenson is still a threat, but it just doesn't seem like they're doing it with the intent that they had. I just don't see how they can match up. They don't have explosiveness. And even on the defensive side of the ball, like, I love Matt Judon in terms of the type of player that he is, but they have some guys along the line, but nothing really terrifies me on either side of the ball for the Patriots. So I think that's a couple dubs. I'll give you. Go ahead, and you don't even have to do the later one.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I just don't think that they've got the. I don't think they've got the talent to match up. I think they'd have to get real lucky and have some sort of crazy windstorm or something.
Yeah, sorry. Knock on wood. Hate to say, like, the Bills get bit by a bit of a bug going into that game, and a few key pieces are out. That's what some of these teams like New England are going to be banking on when they go up against Bills right now.
Then the Jets come to Buffalo for a 1 p.m. game Saturday, December 11th.
Right. So where are we at now?
We're
6-1. We're now what? We're
11-1.
11-1.
This is what I'm saying. So, I mean, you want to pick the Jets to give us a loss? I don't.
No.
All right, so then there's
because by this time it might not even be a Zach Wilson-led Jets.
Right.
Like, if he comes out this weekend and has a game like he had against New England, that New York media the pressure is going to be on in that building, and I don't know that he can make it a whole month until we see him again. So it might be the
Joe Flacco Mike White.
Joe Flacco led Jets at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Then Miami comes to Buffalo. That could get, that could be
a tough one.
That could be something, if they're healthy, if Tua's.
I think Bills fans got to just acknowledge that they're legit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're easily the second best team in the East.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat us once already. Granted, the circumstances around that game, it was, all things equal, I think the Bills probably would have won that game, but
sure.
I don't know. I can't pick Miami to beat us twice this year. I just can't do it.
Yeah, I think my knowledge of this Bills team, I don't have a ton of knowledge of how a Mike McDaniel's Miami organization is, but I do have a good amount of knowledge of Sean McDermott, Josh Allen Bills team, and I know this is going to be a revenge game for Josh Allen, and I would expect maybe his best type of performance of the year in a game like this to kind of get that taste out of his mouth. The way he looked after that game, totally spent, totally exhausted, knowing that if they just did a couple things differently, they walk out of there with a win against all those odds that they went up against. Josh is going to be fuming for that second one, and so the whole team will rally behind that, right? So I don't think they'll get us twice, but I do think Bills fans need to at least get over our sort of like we're the best in the whole world and acknowledge that Miami can actually be a legitimate threat and annoyingly close to the Bills right now.
That game has the potential to be flexed into primetime, I believe, which would be interesting. That would be.
Yes, I haven't looked at Miami's remaining schedule to see where potentially they'll also be at, but you've got to think that one would be flexed with them having beat us before.
Right. So then on Christmas Eve we go to Chicago.
Yeah.
And then we come back.
Yeah, that's going to be a nice little holiday trip. Chicago's pretty fun in the winter. I've been there in the winter. It'll be a nice little fun holiday trip.
Yep.
And come back with a dub.
Yep. And then we're going to Cincinnati, January 2nd.
Yeah, that one could be a toss-up. It really could. I could see if I'm going to pick a loss, which I feel like you have to, just maybe you don't have to, but if you're going to pick one, I could see this. Like late in the season, maybe some guys are dinged up and you're just trying to get a little extra rest heading into the playoffs. I don't know if you've got the 1 seed locked up by now, but you pretty much got to if we're winning out here. Maybe you're in a more conservative mode getting ready for the playoffs, and who knows, since he might be fighting for the wild card spot right there, right? Like, I don't know where they're going to be at by the time they get there. I don't know what the status of Jamar Chase is going to be as we get towards late in the season here. So they definitely have the weapons to hang with anybody in the NFL when they're clicking. I just haven't seen them play with consistency since the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on, like, it feels like you have to pick a loss, right?
Yeah. So I'll give this one.
The problem that I have with this is, first of all, Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl last year. Josh Allen hasn't been to the Super Bowl yet. I mean, that is going to be some sort of a motivating factor. Like, I think, Josh wants to beat Cincy, and also it's in primetime. This is an 8:30 start game,
right?
And we have the best quarterback in the last 50 years in primetime. Right. So until that changes, I have a hard time picking against the Bills in these night games.
Yeah, I don't want to, but I also have
it's right. It's like a
lose one game. It's really hard.
It's like a fun thought experiment. It's like you have to pick.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say it, man. I'm not gonna pick a loss. I think 16-1 seems realistic at this point. Like,
it's not far-fetched.
Right. It's not. It's
like, I'm sure the Jets fans, if the Jets fans turned into our spaces right now, they'd be like, "Oh, listen to these homers." I think if you really knew what you were talking about and you were unbiased person, and you're looking at the schedule and you're looking at the Bills DVOA and looking at film, that people would tend to agree with what you're saying.
It's like, I expect them to lose one or two more games, but at the same time, like, I can't pick what game that's going to be, because they all look like winnable games. Right.
Thomas, what's happening, man?
Hey guys, how we doing?
What's up, Thomas?
Good, how you doing?
So here's my thought, right, with that Bengals game, because I've been really I've been thinking about that one a lot, and I'm in the same boat with you guys. Like right now, it's just like, where do you pick a loss? Kind of like if you look at the Eagles schedule, where's the loss? I think what my question is, let's say they get to the Bengals game, right? If they have the number 1 seed locked up, I still think they're going to play their starters, because otherwise you're going to go 2 weeks without the starters getting any action, which is a big issue.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I don't think they rest guys for 2 straight weeks, especially if they've got the bye locked up, because then it's 3 straight weeks, and that's a long time. So I think
my point was more like, if you've got guys like where Matt Milano is today, right? You got an oblique injury on somebody that's an important person, something like that. I think that Bengals game would give you the ability to be additionally conservative with some players. I wouldn't say go ahead and sit the whole team. Josh is healthy, get him maybe not a full game, but get him some snaps, because you're right, that's a long period of time. What I will say, I want to nip this in the bud a little bit. People are that the Bills, Sean McDermott's success after the bye, but that they're sloppy games. I think that might be one of the most ridiculous narratives that is going to start drumming up here. That, well, we win the games, but they're not great, and that's somehow going to bite us in the butt, and that's how somehow translates to playoff football, because a bye in the playoffs is so much different than a bye in whatever week 8. week 7. So I want to nip that in the bud that I don't think that narrative is true, and I'm going to dunk on that on Twitter, and maybe I'll get proven wrong, but I just don't think that that's a true narrative. The Bills will be at one Bills drive throughout the playoffs. They're not going to go travel. There's no reset. It's locked in playoff mode.
We were talking about the Arizona game in 2020 earlier. That happened right before a bye week, and then we came back and won 6 straight games to end that regular season. So, I mean, and the first one was a decisive win against the Chargers. So I'm not sure. You're right. It's kind of a tired narrative there. I mean, bye week in 2021, we came out of it and beat Miami 26-11. So I don't know. I don't know where people are getting that.
But it wasn't as pretty as
sure.
I don't know. I think some of that is just whatever. If you're getting the wins, that's kind of ultimately all that matters. And I just don't think it translates to playoff football. That's a different type of locked in.
Thomas, what do you think? What do you think our record's going to be the rest of the way?
Sorry, I'm juggling mail and my phone. I have this hard time, and I think the thing is, people say oh, you got to find a loss, and at some point, do we? I mean, like you were saying earlier, ugly losses are winning by 10, right? The games that we've lost are not lost, but the Dolphins game, right? We lost that game, and we almost beat them with a half-gutted roster, playing with the heat from the surface of the sun. I mean, there was everything you could think of. Diggs had IVs in both of his arms, and he's probably the elite athlete. All those things had to happen. The Ravens game was a hot mess of weather. There's just, if you look at this team, and it's kind of, I feel cliche to say with Sean McDermott, but adversity kind of, it makes this team thrive. And so I don't know. I feel every time this team gets put in a position, they've stepped up. And I feel Josh Allen is he's got this mentality that it's him against the world and he wants to always succeed. So I just have this weird feeling that the guy's going to do everything in his power. And it just seems this year too, he's willing to take more shots and he's willing to put himself in harm's way just to make sure, because he doesn't want to keep having this narrative against the team. So I think, to be honest with you, initially my thought was the 2 games that were going to be toughest was Minnesota, because Minnesota's just, I know Kirk Cousins isn't great, and that game potentially, I believe, what is it 4:00? Is that what time it is?
1.
I was going to
1 o'clock, but I think it can be flexed, right?
I don't think so. I think the ones that can be flexed read as TBD in the schedule, and this one's just got 1 o'clock, so I might be wrong though.
So that's one team that I think absolutely could put a licking on the Bills, just because offensively they're stacked. I mean, they're playing really well on all facets. And quite frankly, I know people don't like Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins every single year has exceeded his draft position in fantasy football. And I know that's not a normal metric to look at, but the guy is always doing better than expectation. Yeah. People just think he's garbage for whatever reason. But needless to say, I think this Bills team has everything going for them right now, and they're trending in the right direction. And you're adding little pieces like a Nyheim Hines, like a Dean Marlowe for depth. I don't see many, if any, losses. I think that Dolphins game, to be honest with you, I think we're gonna hold them in check. Because to be honest with you, Tua does not play well in the cold. If you look at his record in the past 4 or 3 years in the cold, he doesn't do well. So I think it's one of those things that I think the Bills are going to step it up, and they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if they end up 16-1. It wouldn't stun me at all.
Is it fair of us to judge somebody in that way when we also don't want Josh Allen to be judged in that way? Because it was just a year ago that there were articles written about the statistics of Josh Allen in cold weather games, right? And then he came out and had the best statistical performance of a quarterback in all time. I'm not saying Tua can do that. I have a hard time giving criticisms that I'm not willing to accept.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think the reason I look at it that way is if you ask people, Josh Allen can be the reason you win a game. I don't think Tua is that person. Like, I don't think Tua is like, you can live and die with Tua. Like, he's not gonna put you over the edge. Whereas Josh Allen, man, he can do everything under the sun, and even if you're having a bad day, he can still find a way to win. If Tua's having a bad day, it's a
Sure.
bad day, like a bad day.
Can I push back a little bit though, because you just said that people aren't giving Kirk Cousins the same amount of respect, and I actually feel like Tua and Kirk Cousins are the same guy.
There's not a lot of love out there for these like kind of mid-tier quarterbacks, right? I mean,
somebody put out a TikTok this summer, and I haven't been able to get it out of my mind. And it was basically saying that the NFL is just full of Kirk Cousins. And it was like you have Andy Dalton, who's just redheaded Kirk Cousins, and then you have Tua Tagovailoa, who's just like Hawaiian Kirk Cousins. Like there's all these different versions of Kirk Cousins, but they're all the same like mid-tier NFL QBs. But I think to your point, Thomas, to all of them, I think that your point stands that their game can be off the rails and totally derailed because they are mid-tier guys. I don't think that they're guys you can win with, but you don't win because of.
Let's bring in our guy GC.
Love GC. If you are not in the Cover One Slack premium membership, you're missing out. GC, one of my favorites. Great in the Slack, great on Twitter, worth a follow. What's up, GC?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the schedule, looking at that Bengals game. Just look at the date. It's January 2nd. That game it'll probably mean a lot more for the Bengals than the Bills. Yeah. Hungover from the holidays. I just kind of prime time. I could kind of just see that being an L. That's all I wanted to say.
I mean, it's fair to pick one loss.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I think that one, they do have the things on their team, enough explosive players on their team to get that win. So I don't think it's unfair to pick that one loss. Listen to us, guys. I wish that I could go back.
I know, right?
Like play this Spaces to myself mid-drought.
It's so weird, but it's so awesome. I mean,
I want to say this though, and I know people have said it before, but like for everybody listening in here and just in general, like enjoy this ride that we're on right now, because I mean, everybody knows life goes fast and like things happen, but like just as fast as the Jim Kelly era was over, Josh Allen's era will be over eventually. And then we're going to look back and be like, holy shit, how unbelievable was that? How unbelievable that was. So, I mean, truly, don't worry about every single week what's happening, how it is. Just enjoy turning on the TV and watching him play, because you even hear people say like Josh Allen's ruined football in terms of like watching other teams, because he really has. It's hard to watch it. Yeah, seriously, it's true. You watch other games and you're like, what the hell am I watching right now? Yeah. And truthfully, enjoy the moment that you're in as a Bills fan, because man, it is, what a time to be alive.
Totally. And that was my frustration on the postgame show. Like the way that what I don't want to happen is, one, the Bills haven't actually achieved anything yet outside of really cool stats that we can retweet and getting us as Bills fans excited about this team. But until they win a Super Bowl, like, I think Bills fans have already sort of put the cart in front of the horse a little bit in terms of entitlement. And like that, the way that we reacted to that Green Bay game felt like a little bit how entitled Patriots fans used to act. Like, you still felt like a loss even though it was a win. And I get that, like, it's cool to self-scout. It's fine to look at your warts and talk about that stuff. I'm not saying we can't talk about the negatives, but just realize also that it's hard to win in the NFL. It's hard to win by multiple scores in the NFL. It's hard to dominate a team on primetime where they never had below 98% win probability. Like, all those things are hard, and I do want to appreciate it in the moment, because you're right. It can be fleeting. It could go away for uncontrolled circumstances that we don't know. So I'm enjoying it every single moment right now. Obviously, anyone here, if you're not already subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, the whole Cover One team, we just added a new podcast, kind of going behind the scenes. Some guys that were working for the Bills in the 90s, take you a little bit behind the scenes. We're constantly adding content to the Cover One family. So make sure that you're tuned in, subscribe, like, across social media platforms, everywhere you go, because we're trying to grind for you and put out some good content here. Don't forget, after the game, before the game, the Air Raid guys will be on. We'll probably do a Twitter Spaces in the morning, like we've been doing for game day, leading into the Air Raid Hours pregame show on YouTube. And then after the game, as always, don't forget to join Greg Thompson and I with Chris. Will be there as our producer on the Cover One post game show. So we definitely got you covered here all weekend, guys, and hopefully we'll see you in Spaces on Sunday morning.
Aaron, I hope you feel better. We didn't get the full Quinn health update this week, but maybe it's been too traumatic to relive.
I hate everything about what's going on. And I just looked at my wife this morning. She's like, "Do you want me to stay home?" And I was just like, "I don't even want to exist today. I'm so mad at everything." Dude, I am like a finely tuned motor that if anything is off the rails, I can't do it. If I lose an hour of sleep, I'm just miserable.
You're like Rob Lowe's character in Parks and Rec. He's like,
yes,
your body's like a microchip.
Correct. And the tiniest little dust just sends it freaking out of whack. Can't handle it.
Well, feel better, man. I hope
Thanks, man.
Hope you're feeling better by Sunday.
I hope so. And if I'm not, I'm hoping Josh's performance leads me to feeling better.
He will bring you life.
That's it. That's my medicine. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you as always making time out to come in and chat with me and Thomas. Always appreciate
thanks,
you.
Thomas. Thanks,
I'm
GC.
GC coming. I'm a little disappointed more you guys didn't pop in and talk, but we'll chalk it up. If you enjoyed this, make sure you come back. We're going to be doing this every single week.